Hey everyone, Melderon here. Quick video. So you've probably heard this buzzing around the internet now. What recently happened was that Blizzard put out a blue post for Classic Era and Hardcore with new patch notes. Now, these patch notes, when you look at them right away, may seem like changes to the game that Blizzard thought would increase balance or be better for the player base. But what in reality what happened was that Classic Era was forced on a new client that Cataclysm SOD is on. And that forcing to the new client created some bugs. And those bugs, instead of actually fixing them and making them back to how Classic Era was, actually caused these changes to be made. These seem innocuous at first, but the issue here is that Blizzard promised to keep Classic Era the day it was after the patch release of 1.12. And that would remain forever. And they would always have this. People paid a lot of money to have characters transferred onto these Classic Era realms in a state that would never change. Blizzard goes back on their promise by enacting these changes, and they're lazy for not actually fixing them. Let's go through all of them. The guild's user interface has been updated to provide more ease of guild management. Now, this is the new guild management pane from Cataclysm, I believe. And the issue that it's causing, it's a different UI. You may like it or hate it, but the issue that it's causing is now guild chats have a 1-second delay. So if you're putting a message in guild chat, there's a delay before your message goes up. The second one, which is pretty egregious, is that Alliance players now have access to the Might of Stormwind, which is basically a version of Warchief's Blessing. The issue here is that on paper, yes, this looks like an actual balancing. This is a good thing, right? Because Alliance had to do weird mind control stuff, go to the crossroads to get Warchief's Blessing. But remember that the game never had an easy way for Alliance to get this. And I'd argue that it already was balanced because of Paladins versus Shamans in raids. You may disagree with me here, but Alliance always had an advantage in raids, in PvE. And I believe that Warchief's Blessing, whether it was intended to or not, balanced the factions a little bit in endgame PvE. Shamans do not have the utility toolkit that Paladins do. They increase DPS with Wind Fury Totem, but they don't actually help in mitigating a lot of issues that can happen in raids. Now, you can see this as a really cool little thing between the factions is that, Horde focuses more on DPS, whereas Alliance is safer and focuses on threat management and things like this. So this change is actually bad for the game, in my opinion, and it's lazy because the reason they're actually doing this is because this has been adding to SOD. SOD has a completely different meta. Blizzard is lazy in the fact that they won't revert this change in Classic Era. They'll just push it because of it's part of the new client and new updates for SOD. SOD is not Classic Era, and incorporating changes from SOD into Classic Era is short-sighted and stupid. Again, you can disagree with me on this one, but Classic Era was supposed to be unchanged. And here's the quote here. As mentioned during BlizzCon, deep dive panel for Burning Crusade Classic, with a pre-expansion patch, players will be provided the option to play their characters on the new Classic Era realm just as it was as of the last day before the patch or continued in the Burning Crusade. This is a violation of a promise that Blizzard made, these changes. If we go back to the changes now, the next one is Songflower, Serenade, and Direwolf Tribute thus can no longer be dispelled by enemy players. This is also a change that is being pushed in SOD, and it's now being pushed in Classic Era. Instead of actually manipulating the change and making sure it doesn't happen in Classic Era, they're pushing it in both. Again, this is up to you. This is a prior point of contention. No one likes having their buff dispelled. This is a mitigation of player griefing. Fine. Not one of the bigger issues here. But it's still clearly a violation of trust and going back on their promise. Again, you may think, Melderon, you're going crazy. These are like really minor things. They're not that minor considering what it opens the door for more changes on Classic Era when there's not supposed to ever be changes on Classic Era. If they want to make Classic Plus or they want to make changes in new freshes, that's fine, but Classic Era should always exist and it should be the way it was the day before the Burning Crusade patch. That's how the game was supposed to be. Finally, Druids can now train and use polearms. This is literally a bug from Cataclysm Classic that they just won't fix. This doesn't really change much. There's not really good polearms for Druids. I mean, if Druids want to pump, they're going to use Manual Crop Pummeler. And as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't change the meta that much. But again, it just screams how lazy Blizzard is, and they won't revert the chains for Classic Era. And they're like, fuck Classic Era, no one plays on it anyway, who cares? And yes, it's a very niche community, but it still is a community, and this just screams laziness and just like, fuck them, basically, is how it feels. You know, one counter argument you're probably going to say is that Chrono Boon is a change. I never wanted Chrono Boon added to the game. The fact that it is added, of course, increases quality of life and makes life not a living hell. It came way too late in Classic. If this is something they discussed in the beginning of Classic, it would have hurt much less, in my opinion, because we all know they made changes to 1.12 with leeway and all these weird things they did, right? So there are changes, but the promise was we won't change anything further before the patch for the Burning Crusade. That was the promise. They never promised they wouldn't alter things beforehand. They're two different promises, so I think it's an inequivalency to talk about Chrono Boon, because Chrono Boon happened during Classic. The promise was we won't change anything after Classic's final end. Classic Era. So there is a petition that Cargo started, and it's on change.org. I will put the link into a pinned comment in the video. If this does bother you, I would really suggest signing this petition. I don't know if anything is going to happen because of this, but it may. So think about it. If this does bother you in any way, sign the petition. It was made by Cargos, and here are the changes here, and this is Cargos' brief synopsis of why this is a problem. Right, so I'll read this here. These recent permanent changes to Classic Era, including Warchiefs busting for the Alliance and Druids being able to train polearms, are an outrageous violation of trust. How can Blizzard just lackadaisically change the meta and aesthetic of the best version of the game without any sort of due process or polling the community? These changes that we've implemented on Classic Era are not temporary, and they now are an official part of Vanilla WoW moving forward and will impact existing servers and future fresh servers. Furthermore, Blizzard has implemented modern UI elements in the Classic Era, such as the new guild tab with voice chat enabled by default. This UI makes it so there's a 1-second delay with guild chat when you type a message, and overall creates a worse experience for players that is not authentic to the original WoW. So I agree with Cargos' points. I think that this is a violation of trust, and it is lazy, extremely lazy, that you can have these little bugs that happen because of a change to a different client and not going back and fixing these obvious bugs. Like the polearm one is an obvious bug. These are from SOD, and this one is just, comes on with the territory of moving on to a different client. None of us wanted these things. This one is a point of contention. This is the biggest point of contention. And again, my argument will and always be is that it wasn't in the original game, probably for a reason. And the original developers did that for a reason. I think it has to do with paladins versus shamans and endgame PvE. You can argue this all day if you want, but it makes the difference between Alliance and Horde performance even greater in PvE. So, again, sign the petition if you would like. Let me know in the comments if you think this is an egregious error and what you'd like to see changed. My stance officially is that Blizzard is lazy and has lied and has broken our trust, which is not surprising because it's Blizzard. Blizzard, please change these things back. Just keep Classic Era, this little bastion that we can go back to if you want to play the original version of the game as close to 1.12 as possible. That would just be great. But anyway, everyone have a great day, and thanks for watching.